Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. I've got something really exciting for you today. We're going to be jumping in and learning Remix, and we're also building a really cool AI tool. So let me give you a demo of the tool, and then we'll get into talking a little bit about Remix. So if I just go to localhost, I've got this running already. So I've been using this AI tool to do blog posts. It's really, really powerful. So let me show you. So give me 10 blog post ideas about web development. Can't type early in the morning. So what this is going to do is it is using the OpenAI GPT-3 API, and we've got some parameters configured that seems to work best for my use case. I actually spent a couple of months retraining OpenAI's GPT-2 open source model. But GPT-3, we can use the OpenAI API now. So it's really powerful, and I think you're really going to get some value out of this one. So this is what the tool can do. It can write code. It can give you ideas. It can write articles. It can do a lot of stuff, and we're not going to scratch the surface too much on that. We're going to focus on these completions today, which basically you're going to ask it to do something, and it's going to do it. It will work for pretty much anything you will ask it, which is why it's great just as a, as a functional tool as it is. So yeah, hopefully this is going to be really useful for some of you to have. The next thing to talk about is Remix. So Remix is a relatively new, and I would say a framework that is picking up a lot of interest really quickly. They're describing themselves as a full stack web framework that lets you focus on the user interface and work back through web standards to deliver a fast, slick, and resilient user experience. So there's a lot of great articles on, why you should use Remix. And I think in the early stages of the launch, there's definitely a lot of that going on, why people are using it and how they're using it. There's a great blog. I've done a lot of videos on Next.js. So that is probably the best comparison to be made for myself and for you, which is looking at why we should use Remix over Next.js. Now, for a relatively simple website where static generation is not a problem. So let's say you have a small blog with a few posts. Next.js is probably the easiest one to get higher performance with, as it stands, because we can use static site generation and just deploy it to Vercel. And what you get with that is an extremely fast website. So the static generation, the fact we've got static pages generated in advance, the user or the browser and the client, they're not actually doing any calculations. They're just getting a static document. That document is also cached and distributed globally. It makes a really fast website. So with Remix, what we're doing is everything is server-side rendering. So instead of using get static props, it would be like using get server-side props. So a request is made on every page load. But with Remix, we can deploy it everywhere. So it can be deployed to places like fly.io, which you can globally distribute your application and scale it so it can have a lot of different servers. If your main target audience is the UK and the US, you could get away with, three different deployments to get really quick response times from those servers. So yeah, Remix is really great for speed in that aspect where we do it correctly. One thing that I am doing at the moment, just as a thing, is rewriting my own website in Remix. It's not really necessary, I wouldn't say. It's just been for fun and for learning. So my website uses Notion API as a backend, which, to be honest, is really slow. So when we're thinking about making a request on every single page load, then we'll think, do you know what, that is that is going to cause a slow user experience. That's why we might choose to do static generation usually. And we don't have to worry about the API calls. They're done in advance. However, what I'm actually doing, so you can see here, it only took 85 milliseconds to read these blog posts. And that's because we also have a globally distributed Redis data cache. So you can see here, I've just got the latest posts. They are cached. So if I delete those and refresh, we can see it took 800 milliseconds to read. So not the worst API response time. I do get a lot slower sometimes, and certainly in other areas of the world where you're further away from the API, you're going to get much higher response times. However, when we refresh again, we're down to 70 milliseconds, and that's because it's being cached, and that's distributed globally. So this website, where's it gone? It's going to be deployed on Cloudflare Workers, which has got 250 locations all around the world. The Upstash Redis cache is also deployed globally. So no matter where you are in the world, you're going to get these lightning fast page refreshes and load times. So that's one of the cool things about Remix. It allows us to do that. Like I say, for a small blog, it's probably not too necessary. But when we start adding in things like authentication and we add further complexity and we want to give, really great user experiences with dynamic pages and search and things like that, then we're going to get a much faster experience, I believe, using Remix and doing it that way. So that's the main benefit of Remix from a output point of view. I think the developer experience is really great. That's something that Next.js has done and pushed forward a lot, is that developer experience. And you get similar with Remix. It abstracts away quite a bit of complexity. The data loading is all pretty much done for you. Forms, we use the standard browser form. And yeah, it is really simple. The developer experience is great. But with what Remix is doing is it's using a lot of browser technologies, and that means that we can disable JavaScript and our website will still work. So yeah, lots of benefits. We'll talk through more of them as we progress. I'm going to stop rambling now and we can get to building our AI writing assistant, so to speak. So let's get started. So one of the other great things about Remix is they have these pre-configured stacks. Now, we could start this from scratch and talk about implementing authentication. We could talk about a lot of different things, which would be really valuable. However, to get started using Remix, I would recommend actually using a stack, because you can see how things are done in the, this is how Remix developers are saying this is how to use the tool. So if you explore those code bases, then you're going to, really see the best practices and how to use the tool. So we're going to go with the Indie stack. And what that gives us basically is the deployment target for this is going to be Fly. We can change that. It's not a problem. We have a SQLite database, which is going to be hooked into Prisma. It's already got Tailwind CSS configured for us. It's using MSW to mock API requests. It's got unit testing, code format and linting, and it's also a TypeScript project. So that is the first thing we are going to do. So if I open up Terminal, I'm already in my development folder. So I'm just going to paste in the command here, and that's going to do everything that we need it to do. It's going to give us a great starting point. So it's going to ask where we want to create our app. So I'm just going to call this AI writing. Hit enter. Yes, we want to run npm install, and it's going to create our app for us now. So it's asking, do we want to do TypeScript or JavaScript? So I will hit TypeScript. And then we are now running the final script. Hopefully this isn't going to take too long. So you can see it's setting up the Prisma database. Of course, we already have some pre-configured stuff. It's applied the migration, it's generated the Prisma client, it's seeded our database with a user. That's all done, and that's it. So if we cd into AI writing, and then let's open this up in our code editor and have a look at what Remix has given us. Now, when you look at this file and this folder, you know, there's quite a bit of stuff in here. So don't be, try not to be overwhelmed by the amount of stuff if you haven't seen it before. We're going to talk through quite a bit of it at the moment. So the app folder, this is our Remix application. Everything for our app is pretty much going to live within here. Now, when we compare to Next.js, the root.tsx, this is essentially our _app.js. So this here is our entry point, so to speak. And the route folder is like the pages folder. So let's start this up and we can go and have a look at the front end first. So what it's done in the seeding is given us a user. So Rachel at Remix.run, and then Rachel is cool. So let's check on this. So we've got our localhost 3000. So we can see here we've got our home page. Now this home page in route, we've got an index.tsx. This is the index page. So you can see here we've got the sign in, sign up, login. This is our index page. Those are all the images that we've got here. Let's log in. So we go to a /login page, which is here. So the email address is this, and the password is Rachel is cool. Let's remember us. And what it's created here is a notes app. So it's saying here we've got no note selected. To select a note, we can select a note on the left or create a new note. So these are the notes. We can delete one. We can create a new one. Cool note. This is a note. So let's save that. And then we've got a note here. And this we can see now we're at the notes / with an ID here. So let's start with the / notes. We have the index, which is basically saying you've got no note selected, select a note on the left, or it's got a link to create a new note. So when we click new note, that's going to notes / new, which is this page here. And then when we're on a note itself, we have got this $ note ID, which is this note here. So in Next.js, this would be your dynamic. You would have note ID like this. So this is your dynamic notes page. So the health check is something for Fly.io. We'll leave that in there. Join, that will probably be where you go to sign up. So / join. Awesome. So entry client and entry server, we're not going to make any changes in these. The root, we are going to make changes to. Everything that we do in the root will be applied. So if we wanted to, for example, change the background color for a whole application, then we would do it in the root, similar to doing it in the _app.js within Next. So we're going to spend our time developing and building the application within this app. So styles, Tailwind CSS, this is the compiled styles. And we can see in our package JSON that we've got a generate CSS script, which is outputting the Tailwind CSS styles into that CSS file. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here. However, we'll get started and we're not going to worry about too much of it. So the first thing I want to do is get rid of this notes section for now, because we don't need that. The index page, let's get rid of everything in there. We do want to use an optional user on index page, right? So let's just start off brief. Now, I'm going to try and go a bit slower in this video than I usually do. So please bear with me. So this is the index page. So let's go back to index now. Cool, so we've got our index page, join, login, log out, notes. We don't want to have this notes here. So join, login, and log out are cool. So on the root page, we're not doing too much here. So body, class name. So let's say here I want the body to be minimum height of screen, and then the background. Let's just make background. What's the gray I like? I think it's slate. Background slate 900. So we've done that within our root. Cool. So we've got that. And then what I'm going to do, let's go here and make this text slate 100. And then let's make sure our login and join pages are good. Okay, so I'm guessing we lost something from our root page, did we? No. So this has now, it's no longer centered. So min height is screen. If we do that, does it go back to the middle? Yep, that's cool. And then wherever we've got text gray 700, let's change that to text slate 300. And is there any other text? Text gray 500, that should be cool. Don't have an account signed in. That remember me is really dark, so let's make that 400. And then when we've got gray 500, let's make that 400 as well. Text gray 400. Cool. So I'm not sure why the live reload has stopped working. We still have live reload in here, so let's just restart the dev server and see if that fixes it. It's the CSS that wasn't running. Cool. So we'll make the same changes to our join page now and just make sure those are good. So if I do join here, so let's do the same thing. Min height, screen, gray 700 goes to text slate 300. And then the 500, that goes to 400. And that goes to 400. And then there's no remember me on this one. Cool. So that's good. And reloaded. Awesome. So let's make an account here with my email address. And then, yeah, put in a crappy password. Cool. So we're now logged in, and that is great. So the authentication that is already set up for us, let's have a look. So in the models, we have got the user model here. So if you're not familiar with Prisma Prisma is a database ORM, a really popular one. And what it does, it allows you to define a schema. So we can see here, the data source is a SQLite database, and we have some models within it. So we've got the user model, which is ID, email, created and updated at, it's got a password, and the user has some notes, so we can actually delete that. We don't want that. We have a notes model, which we don't want anymore. And the great thing that Prisma does is it manages the migrations for us. So if I cancel out of this and then do npx prisma migrate dev name remove note. So what that's going to do is it's going to run all of the SQL stuff that that had all the notes. So it's amending our database now. It's running the SQL queries. So you're about to drop the note table, which is not empty. Do you want to apply this migration? So let's go yes. And then what it's done is it's migrated the database, and we're now getting some errors. So running the seed command after the migration, we don't want to create this note. We still want to do user, Prisma user create. So that's cool. So we can change the seed to, I don't know, gmail.com. Password, let's do welcome 123. So that's good. So we're going to seed it with our own user now. In the model, we've got a note model, which is essentially, if you think about API routes within Next.js, this is the functions for making changes to our notes model. So we've got get a note by the ID, get note list items by the user ID, create a note, and delete a note. So we don't need any of those either. So let's restart our dev server, see if that has fixed it. So it looks like we're back up and running. So this is the index page. So we now have our user. So we're using this function use optional user from our utils folder. So if we go to, where's our utils folder? It's not utils folder, it's just a file. So we've got redirect here, use optional user, which is basically saying if there's no data and if there's no user, then return undefined. If we use the use user, then it's going to throw an error because that is required. So on our index page, what we can do is we do want an optional user on the index page. So underneath here, let's just create a paragraph, text slate 300, and let's say welcome, and then we want to do user.email, like so. So we're logged in and all is well. So hopefully you can see the power of the Remix stacks, and it's provided us with a full-blown authentication system this is ready to deploy. Prisma is already set up, Tailwind is already set up, and we're ready to really crack on and start developing. Now, one thing that we might want to do as well, so it should allow you to register and log in. So this is going to visit the home page and find a link with the name sign up. We don't have that anymore. So I'm just going to comment that out for now. Should allow you to make a note. Again, let's comment that out for now. So we'll re-enable those tests when we have login functionality built back in. All right, so now that we're done with kind of the cleanup and the introduction, let's get to building. So back on our index route, let's just make this a little bit, more appropriate, so to speak. So yeah, where we've got a user, then we can display the paragraph which says welcome, and then we can do user.email like so. Otherwise, we can display a div with, let's put in here 2 links. So we still have a link imported, and that's coming from at Remix.run React. So we're going to import everything from there. So slightly different to Next.js, the links, we put 2 like this. So we want to do /join, so we can keep it join. And then we can also do link to login with a login. And then let's just make that reflect. So they will sit beside each other like so. And we can do like gap 5. So if we go back, where are we at? So that paragraph, let's make it text lit 200, and this div, well, let's leave it, let's just do the text for now so we can see it. Here we go. So we got welcome, and then what we might want to do, where we've got this paragraph, let's also do a link to, and then we do logout. And then it's not liking that because we've got 2 components there. So now we've got that and my text. So let's actually just make this a div, and then we can put the class name text slit 200 on here. And we don't need this on there now. Cool, so logout. So link to /logout. So what's happening here? So return logout and then redirect. So I am not seeing, it feels like if we navigate to log out, that should be logging us out. However, it is not. Link to /logout. Okay, so let me just check. If we go back into here, let's look at the app and let's see. Empty stack app routes. Is there a logout on the user? No, so it's definitely on the notes page though. select new note, no index page. So if we go on this notes page here, link. Ah, okay, so we do a form with the action / logout. So let's take this. So that makes sense. So each route, if it's not exporting a React component, then this is technically classed as like a resource route. So we can call it with an action. So that makes sense. So on our index page, let's bring that in. So this is going to be a form from Remix.run React. Button. Yeah, let's leave that like that. See what that looks like. Cool. So then we can log out. We can join and log in. And then let's whack these button styles on here. So we can make those like that. And then on this main div, let's do a main element here. We probably more like a header, I guess. So we're gonna wrap all this inside of there. I'm just gonna say that's flex, justify, center, and then I am center, and then this one, I'm gonna say like max width 3XL, like so. That is cool. And then on this one, let's just do minimum height of the screen. So we got that perfectly centered. So this is index page, you know, welcome to the most awesome AI writing assistant. And then let's make that bold and bigger. Awesome AI writing assistant. So we've got the H1. And then we've got those two. So if we do MX auto with that, width full. So welcome. So let's log in. We should. Did I? So that's redirecting to notes on login. So what I want to do is, so we're doing a safe redirect to /notes. Let's just go back to the home page. So let's try that again. So we're on the home page. So we've got welcome. That is cool. And then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to split this off into two, like so. Hopefully you can see all of that okay. So the most awesome AI writing assistant. Cool. So I'm just working through some styling here. Justify between. That's cool on that one. And then we can do some padding on the side, bring it in a bit. Let's bring it in a lot. Why not? This is not gonna look good, by the way. I'm just making it so, you know, our eyes don't hurt when we look at it as it stands. Okay, so that one is fine. So then the join and login buttons, So if we do that one with vol mx, no, mx auto, can we just do a text center? No. So we've got those, so let's do width of full on this one. And then I'll take that. This one I want to do flex, justify center. Let's do item center as well. And then on here, we'll make that div like so. Let's move that down like that. Awesome. So we'll put the same margin of 4. And yeah, that is fine. So log in. So it still redirects to notes for some reason. So verify, login, return, request, and a redirect to. So create user session, login page, redirect to. There we go. So if we go back, log out, log in. Awesome. So we're now logged in and we're on the home page. So next to the logout, form action logout. So what I'm going to do here, so let's make that a div. We're going to do the same treatment. Class name equals flex gap of 5. And then I'm just going to put in here a link to the button. So let's just do a link to the button, a dashboard, or start writing. And then let's call that /writing. Let's check these styles. I'm not really happy with how this is wrapping at the moment, but not to worry. Okay, so we're good. We can start writing. That's going to take us to /writing. So that's pretty good for the home page. Let's just check sign up. So if I just use a different email address, create account. So that is working just fine. Awesome. So we're good to go. So if we think about what we want to do next, we want to create a write-in page, which is going to be the hub for all of our writing. So what we can do to make that happen is we can do one of two things. We could create within our routes, a writing.tsx page. We could create a writing folder and then have an index page for that. Because we're not going to worry about nested routes or anything like that, we're just going to have the one page. I'm just going to create a writing.tsx file. And then at this point, so if I'm just going to copy everything from index and bring it across, and I'm going to get rid of everything here. I don't want to get an optional user. I want to use user because it's not optional at this point. If you're here, you need to be logged in. So we can say here user.email. Let's do text layer 100. So we've got that now. Just a div, which is send the user's email. So if we go to start writing now, so element type is invalid, expected a string. Export default function is not, this isn't the problem. Use user. That's interesting. Cool. So we have our user here. So if I go back to the index page and log out and go to writing, then we're getting a error. So that's not really what we want. So we're going to fix that in the next steps. So we are fetching a user that doesn't exist, and we're currently getting this application error. Now, we're going to start to talk about data fetching with Remix. So to do data fetching, what we're going to do is we're going to export a loader function. So if we just do export const loader equals, and that will do for us for now. So that's GitHub Copilot suggesting things. We want to use, so inside of our models, we've got user, verify, it's actually in session. So what we want to be using is this require user ID. So we want to do import require user ID from session.server. And what that is going to do is it's going to redirect us to the login page. And then once we've logged in, it will redirect us back to where we were, which is why it's taken the request URL here. So require user ID. So we can say const user ID equals await require user ID, like so. And this is all in the example here. So yeah, we're using the same thing. User ID is await require user ID. So now that we have that in our loader, the loader needs to return something. So we can bring in JSON from Remix.run node, or we can use server runtime, I believe. Let's see if that works. So we can return JSON, like, okay, whatever. It doesn't really matter at this point. So now when we refresh this page, we're redirected to the login page, and then we've got these search params, redirect to, and then we've got the / writing. So let's log in. And then we're back to our writing page. And it's all because of this loader function, which is essentially get server-side request. And where we're not able to require a user ID, it's going to redirect us to that login page. So that's brilliant functionality, and it all comes out of the box. And we now know that whenever we're using this use user, that this is returning a user. You can see the use user function in here is within our utils. Awesome. So let's talk about what we want to achieve. So the first example was basically it would make a request, and then it will show you your result, and then it will disappear forever. That's not really what we want to do. We want to First of all, we want to give a user a certain amount of requests that they can make. We want to store their requests that they've made. We want to assign an amount of like tokens that each request is using. Because if you're asking for 1,000 words, it's using a lot more API credits than if you're asking for 100. So that's what we're going to integrate. So what we want to show on screen is, five or so of the previous requests that were made. We want to display how many tokens they have, and things like that. And then that needs to update with each request. So the pattern that this will follow, and it's, how things will have worked a lot of years ago, traditionally. The pattern that it will follow with this is we're going to submit an action. The action is going to be, a post request to the OpenAI API, which contains the prompt, what we want them to complete for us. And then after that, it's going to also return a response. So we want to save the original prompt. We want to save the response. We want to save how many tokens that request used. We want to deduct the amount of tokens that request used from the tokens that user has. Eventually, what we're going to want to do, although it won't be in this video, probably the next one, is, we want to allow someone to purchase these tokens, right? So all of this would be automated. So they will log in. They'll not be able to use it because they don't have any tokens. They can purchase some tokens. Them tokens will be added to their balance, and then they can use it. Every time they use it, it will determine how much tokens they've used and deduct that from their balance. So hopefully that's making sense what we're trying to achieve here. So let's get started building out this page. So the first thing to take care of, TypeScript is mad at us. So if we define that this is a loader function, like so, then that will make it happy. And I'm going to switch this over to Node, actually. There we go. So that you can see we've got the interface for the loader function there. So let's get started making our database. So within Prisma, we've got the Prisma schema here. And what we can do is we can make a completions, is what I'm going to call it, model. So we're going to make model completion. So every completion is going to have a string. The the next thing that we have is a prompt, which is also a string. We will have the actual, we can call it an answer. That's good with me. We want the amount of tokens it used, which is a number. That's probably want an int, right? We want to do a user relationship. We need a user ID. So you're going to give us that, yeah. So what's it not liking? We need a field on the user itself. So where we've got here, we want to have completions, which is a completion array, like so. So we've done that relationship. That's good power of GitHub Copilot there. Save us referencing the old Prisma docs. I've written this out dozens, if not more times, but I can still never remember the the syntax. So we're gonna have an ID prompt, an answer, the amount of tokens that it used. It's got the user. We might want to do the created at like this, which is just going to always default to now, which is fine. So we don't need to worry about that. And then on our user, let's add what we need to do here. So we can do tokens, which is an int, and the default, we're going to be generous and we're going to give 10,000 tokens to everyone. So almost like a free trial, right? So that's great. So whenever we get a new user and they're created, then we're going to default them to 10,000 tokens. So I think that is good. So let's npx, let me just wait for that to go away. So npx migrate dev --name, and then we'll say added completions. So again, this is going to write the SQL query that will structure our database for us. So what we're getting wrong here. No such file. Did I do that correct? Oh, migrate. npx Prisma migrate dev. That's better. So again, what this is doing is it has run the migration, done the SQL queries to create the new table for us and everything that we need. It has generated the Prisma client. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to reload the window here just to make sure it's going to pick up those types and things correctly. And we can, I think we can be happy with that. So let's have a look at what we're going to do. So what I always like to do is just make a list of stuff. So we need to create the form for input. We need to create the action route we'll create the action for the form. Yeah, sure. That's pretty much it. We need to bring data onto the page from the DB, bring recent completions onto page from the database so that they actually show up. And that's pretty much it, because what's going to happen is we're going to be in our loader function, we're going to be loading the 5 most recent completions that have happened. In the action function, we're going to be creating and adding a new one, which is then going to be loaded again through the loader function. So we don't really need to worry about too much state management or anything like that. So I guess the other thing that we need to do is, make this look pretty. So that is where we're going to start. So we don't really need this user.email. We know that there is a user. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this. Like so. And let's start up our dev server again. That would be useful. So we're going to create the form as well, but I just want us to be able to log out from this page if we need to. So that's the index page. Let's log in. I think because I've restarted it, yeah, I've got a different password. So start writing. Cool. So we can get rid of this start writing stuff here. Oops. Like so. Cool. So now let's, within that big div, let's just put in a h1 AI writing tool. So we make the text pretty big and bold, like so. And then on here, let's just do, why are we getting that? Is that because of the padding? Yeah, so I don't really want the padding on here now. So let's just put the padding on the top level div. So we do padding of, see, and that's something actually, let's go and put some padding on everything. So if we add it into our root, so just on our body, so we do like padding of 4. On a small screen, we'll do a bit more, padding of 6, like that. So it will pad everything. And we don't need to worry about doing that everywhere because I often forget. It's fine for me to do it on this application because it's relatively simple. You know, maybe you don't want padding on absolutely everything, but it's cool for us. So we're done with index now, we're done with login. So right in, we've got our AI writing tool title here. Let's get rid of that. And we can start creating our form. So if you remember, we had a form here. So let's do the same thing. So we've already got a form imported. So I'm going to create a form like so. The action on this one is going to be a post, and that's pretty good. What I want to do is just have a field set for everything in the form, and then we can do the width of full, that's fine. Because what I want to be able to do is just disable the whole field set. So let's add a text area right now. So we're going to give it a name of prompt. We can give it an ID of prompt. I don't want calls. Rows, let's make 5, like so. And then we can add on class name here equals width of full. So I also, on this field set, we can add a bit of margin at the top. No, not that much for what we used on the index page. We'll keep it consistent. And then we can do background slate, I don't know, 800, text slate 200, rounded, small rounding on it, like so. Cool, so that's good. And then let's just add like padding of 4 as well. So we've got some nice padding there on that. So as far as the input goes, that's where we're going to submit the input. The next thing I want to add on is an input of number. Type equals number. Name is going to be tokens. ID is going to be tokens. And then we can have a default value. Let's put 150 to start with. That's pretty sensible. And then let's put the same classes on there. So we can do this. So the only one I don't want is width full. So let's actually do a width of like 20. I think that's good. Maybe 24. So we get those there. Yep, that's absolutely fine. Getting really annoyed by this, the margin on this. So the next thing we want to do is add our submit button. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a div to here. And I'm going to flex these so they go side by side. So we've got that input. So let's add a button type equals submit. And then I'm going to do submit here. And then we can grab our logout button. That is fine. Those styles, I mean. And then we'll just whack a bit of margin on the left there. Margin left of 4. That is awesome. And then what I can also do is we're doing our user. So I can do like user dot tokens, right? So we can see how many tokens is left. So I'm just going to put just to the right of this, let's add a div and just put you have user.tokens remaining like that. And then we can do item center on this. Item center. And then margin left of 4. 10,000 tokens remaining. I'm just gonna we could user.tokens.to locale string like this. So it looks a bit better. I can whack the comma in there. You have 10,000 tokens remaining. So that's looking pretty good. Let's add some margin on the top of that, create a bit of gap. Like so. Awesome. So we've got our form pretty much there. The next thing we're going to look at is picking up the data from this form within our action. So let's work a little bit on our action. So what we want to do is get this prompt from our form. So to do this in Remix, we're going to export const action, which is an action function. Why is it not importing that for me? So we can do action function here, which is going to be async action function equals async request response, and we're good to go. We don't actually need a response object here. Did I put const? Export const action. So the first thing we want to do, now remember this loader and the action is only happening on the server side. So we're going to grab our user ID. That's the first thing that we're going to need to submit the prompt. We need to attach it to a user. We've got that relationship within the database. Actually, let's just get the data from that. So yep, let's return some random thing right now. We're going to fix the loader function as well after this, but I'm going to have an action so I could submit something, so then we actually have something to load, if that makes sense. So let's get our request body. So the request body, we're going to await the request dot form data, like so. And then let's just console log the request body like this. So do something cool. So if I submit that, we should be expecting to see it on the server. What was the error we got? Prompt tokens right in post. Export const action. Async. It's a request. So that looks good. So that action equals post. So that action is logout, and the method is post. So that should be good. I see the problem. This is method equals post. So the action for this is the logout route, and the method is post. The method of this is a post request. So let's try that. Awesome. So we can see here we have got, showing on our server side right now, we have got the request body. So it's slightly different to how you would normally see it. But what we can do is we can say body equals object from entries, and then we give it the request body like this. And if we console log the body and submit that, we can see we've got the prompt and the tokens, which is pretty much all we need to do that. So let's think about what we need to do next. So there's quite a bit within this action function. So we need to, we're not going to validate the body. We definitely should, but we're not going to do that. So the first thing that we need to do is check the user has enough tokens to make the request. If they do, then that's great. We will make the request to open AI API. If the request is successful, we will update the user tokens, save the completion to the database, like so. So on this one, if not enough, we want to return an error and don't do anything. Make the request to the open API. Yep, so if it's a success, deduct the tokens from the user. No, we don't want that, we already got that. Stop. So update the user tokens if request successful. So we want to say here, if not successful, return error. Update the user tokens if the request is successful. Save the completion to the database. And perhaps we want to do this first, because if we don't save it to the database, it's not going to show. So we don't really want to deduct tokens. So save the completion to the database. Update the user tokens if the request is successful. And then finally we can return out of here. So quite a lot to do within this action function. All right, so let's start logically and look at if the user has enough tokens. So we've got the tokens in the body, and we're also going to need the user. So we're going to do current user equals await, and then we can do get user by ID, like so, and then we're going to pass in the user ID like that. And then let's just console log that current user right now and submit. Let's see what's working. Yeah, so we can see here we've got our current user. So within here, so we need our body. So let's do, so let's create our errors. And we can create an error called tokens, like so. So we want to check if we've got the current user No, we don't need to do that. So we'll do if tokens is greater than the current user.tokens, then we want to say we've got an error which is not enough tokens. Otherwise, the error is going to be undefined, like so. So tokens, so that's going to be body.tokens. Cannot be applied to types form. So let's make sure that this is a number. And then it's going to say the current user can be null. So if we say we've got the current user, because this get user by ID, is it possible? It's possible that it can be null. Okay, so we've now got errors. So let's create a variable like has errors. So we'll say that object dot values errors dot sum, and then we've got the error message, and again error message, like this. And then we say if has errors, then we just want to return, and we can return JSON errors, like that. And we have our JSON function there. So essentially, so let's try and do a request now with 10,001 tokens. We can't actually see that, but if we return the errors here, and then underneath the text area, we'll say if we've got errors, and then what we need to do now is say const, this is action data, right? Action data equals use action data. So we can actually just go ahead and call this errors, because we're only going to be pulling errors from the action data. So if we've got errors, then let's display, we'll just do a paragraph like so. And then here we'll say errors.tokens, like that. And then we can do small and text red 700 or something like that. So let's change that to 10,001. Not enough tokens. So that is good. And if we try and do it with one token, we're fine. Or if that, we're fine. Cool. So we are now handling if the user has enough tokens, which is what this is all about. Copilot messing this up. All right, so now that we have checked if we have enough tokens. So we check if they have enough. If there's not, then we're returning an error. The next thing is to make a request to the OpenAI API. Now, this is the URL that we're going to be making the request to. So I'm just going to say, let me just get the prompt text. I'm going to call it, and that's prompt. So sorry, body.prompt. Yeah, I don't really need to do that. Let's just use the body. So we're going to do response equals await fetch. Go away. Like this. And then we're going to pass in our parameters. So the method for this is going to be post, like so. We need headers, so we're going to say the content type, application JSON, and then what I have done in a .env file, I have created a OpenAI key environment variable. So if you go into your account, OpenAI has an API key that you need to get from there. So then we're going to send the authorization header, authorization, and then that is going to be the word bearer, and we're going to have, yeah, that looks right, OpenAI key, like so. So this is the URL, post request, we're sending JSON data. So what we need to do is provide the body. So we're going to make that into a JSON string like so. And we're going to pass in some parameters. So the prompt is going to be body.prompt. And then all of the parameters for this you can read about in the documentation. However, what I'm going to do is just copy and paste them here because there's quite a few. So this is going to be body.tokens like this. So you can read all about these settings within OpenAI. I would recommend tweaking them. You will get very different results by changing some of these parameters. So we now have our request lined out. So let's say data equals away response.json, and then let's quickly console log that data. So now we're actually making an API request. We're going to try. So let's put something sensible. All right, just say tell me a story. So incorrect API key undefined. So let's restart our dev server after we've added the environment variable. Hopefully that will fix that problem. So it's probably thinking right now. Here we go. So we now have a response. Now, if you look at the response that we're getting back, we can see we've got an ID, the model that we used, and then some choices. Now, we're always asking for one response by default. So what that means is our completion text is going to be away. It's going to be data.choices 0.text. Yeah. So if we do this now, so let's submit that again. we've got our completion text here. So the next thing for us to do is to add this to the database. What we can and probably should do is wrap this in a try catch so we can make sure if the response fails, we can do this. So response equals await fetch, completion text. So let's have all of that in the try. Error. I had it before. Return. There we go. Objectives type unknown. Error. So let's just make that any. Why not? So if it's not successful, then we're going to return the error. So that is this part here. So at any point in this process, if we have an error, it will catch it here and just return the error message. So the next step is going to be to save the completion to the database. So if we think about what we want to do here, we want to take the prompt from the body. We want to take the number of tokens from the body, and we want to get the actual completion text from the API response and save those to our database. So for interacting with our database, I'm going to create another models file, and I'm just going to call it completions.server.ts, and that's going to be run on the server. And then I want to import Prisma, and I want to do it from there's a file which has initiated the Prisma client for us. So we do db.server like that. /db.server like so. Yeah, it's that one. So then I want to say here, let's export a function. We'll call it add completion. And that is going to take, so we need the user ID to link it to a user. We need, let's call it an AI completion. And then let's take the prompt and let's take in the tokens like so. So then let's just define these things here. User ID string. Yeah, let's just do that. Why not? So let's format that. So we've got await Prisma.completions. Yeah, so I don't really want to do all of that. Let's undo that. Let's do it ourselves. So user ID. So if we import user from, this is one of the great things about Prisma. We've got our types. So import type user. So user ID is going to be a user ID. We've got AI completion, which is a string, prompt, which is a string, and then tokens, which is a number, like so. So add completion, that's what it's taken, and then we're in here. So we want to return Prisma, go away, Prisma dot completion dot create. And then we're going to give it data. So the data is going to be prompt. We've got the AI. So it's taking an answer here, which is the AI completion. We need to do tokens. But I'm going to wrap that in number just to make sure. So we need to do it like this. Number tokens. And then the user, we're going to do connect. ID is user ID. So that should be our add completion function done. Everything looks good. So what we can do here is completion text is that. So we can say const added completion equals await add completion. And that needs to take in quite a few things. So we've got the AI completion, which is a completion text. We have got user ID. So what's in in here? We need the prompt, which is body.prompt, and we need the tokens. So let's make that a string. And then let's console log the added completion. So tell me a funny story. Submit. So we're going to add some state to show that it was loaded. And what I'm going to do, so another cool thing about Prisma is we gives you a Prisma Studio, so we can look inside of our database. So I'm going to run npx Prisma Studio. It's opened it up on localhost. And you can see we've got one completion here. So it's created an ID. It's got tell me a funny story. It's got an answer. It's got tokens. And it's done the create of that for us. We don't need to worry about that because we set the default as now. Cool. So we're now able to create the completions, add them to our database. Again, if any of this is not successful, it's going to catch the error. We're going to need another Prisma function to update the tokens. So let's do that next. So updating the tokens should probably happen within the user file. So let's do export async function update tokens, and that's simply going to take in new tokens, which is a number like so, and then return Prisma user.update where ID equals, yeah, we actually need two things. So we need an ID. So we've got our user in this file already. So let's do this. New tokens. That is user tokens. Like so. So now this is where we want to do this. So we're returning Prisma.user.update, where the ID is our ID, and our new tokens is going to become our tokens. So we've done that now. So let's update the user tokens if it's successful. So we're going to do that. Save completion to the database equals this. So update the user tokens if the request is successful. So const updated tokens equals await update tokens, which we're going to pass in user ID, the body tokens. So that's absolutely fine. And then if all of that is good, then we can return JSON. So we can just return the added completion and the updated tokens, like so. Type of user is not assignable to type number response init. So this is never going to happen now, so we can get rid of that. And then we'll fix that TypeScript issue in a minute. So the next step, what we're actually doing is pretty much everything we need to, except displaying the completion on the front end. So tell me a funny story, we hit submit. Let's try it one more time. So we're not console logging anything, but let's tell me a funny story about a dev. So let's just submit that. And then what we're going to do, we're going to go into here. It's making the post request. That's done. So if we refresh our completions, Prisma Studio is running. Completion. So something is actually going wrong here. So save the completion to the database, console log that completion. That's not going to stop this working, but let's just double check. Just making the request. That part took 7 seconds, which is about what we would expect. But we're not getting the added completion here. API response, added completion. So let's do the trusty console log debug. So this has happened. This didn't happen. Let's console log that error, just in case it is error. Because we're not doing anything with the errors, so we won't know if it's an error at this point. It will just return nothing. Okay, here we go. Prisma completion create a unique constraint field on the field's user ID. Prisma completion.create. So it's this one. So user ID. Let me check what type that should be. ID is a string. Can't see why that would be anything else at this point, but unique constraint failed on the field user ID. So what it's saying is that that isn't unique. So that's why it hasn't worked on the first one. Prompt tokens. Connect ID string user ID. I think I know what's happening. So what you didn't see me do was, so I created, no, that's not it. ID. Why is that not unique? Completion. It's this. So what it's expecting is the user ID within our completions needs to be unique because we just copied it across, or trusted Copilot, I'm not sure which one. User ID, which is a string, that doesn't need to be unique, because if it's unique, then we can only have one completion per user. So let's run Prisma migrate dev remove unique from completion. Cool, so that will fix this problem. So we can get rid of this and get rid of this. And then we'll do something on the front end in a sec to handle errors a lot more gracefully. So let's refresh this now. Let's log in. So we can start writing. Tell me a funny story about a dev. Submit. So we can see it's working now as expected. I believe I will also need to, come on, why is it not? There we go. Restart Prisma Studio because we ran a migration. Yeah, so that's the one that has worked. If we do another one, 150 tokens remaining. Something doesn't seem right about that either. So user tokens 150. I don't feel like I used all of those. So let's change this back to 10,000. And refresh. And submit that and see what happens with our tokens. Yeah, 150. So it's showing it's updating tokens to the actual number of tokens that we've used and not subtracting them, right? new tokens. Yep, so I see what's happening, I believe. So when we do add completion, updated tokens, we don't want the body.tokens, we want to do the current user.tokens minus the body.tokens. Current user, when we have a current user, of course. Why is it not liking that? Maybe if type any. Can we do this? Nested numbers? Probably. So let's change my tokens back to 10,000. Save change. So if we refresh now, we've got 10,000. Tell me something funny. $98.50 tokens remaining. And for some reason we got an error message. So is that because it's taken the added completion from the action data. So if I go now and console log on the front end errors, it's actually going to show once we have a response. I believe it's showing our it's not just where we have errors, right? So we still have our, if we've got errors, return JSON errors. So we don't actually need to return anything here because we're not going to be using any of that data. So let's fix that. We want the action data to be undefined, really, unless we have errors for this use case. Unexpected end of JSON input. So JSON. So we can say, yeah, let's do this. Oh, go away. So I'm going to say errors is undefined. And then we can send back the added completion like that. Parsing error, comma. So if we submit that now, getting lots of undefined, and then yeah, the actual added completion is separate. So that's what we want, if all of that completes correctly. So we can change that to errors like this. And what I could do under here is just, okay, let's leave this for now. Let's keep working through. I'm just conscious of time. So everything is working. The issue we're having at the moment is we're not actually fetching the responses and displaying them on the front end. So that's what we're going to do next. So let's create the code, let's create the model and the database interaction to get the completions. So I want to export async function get most recent completions, and that needs to take in just a user ID, and that is of type user ID, like so. And then we just want to return Prisma.completion.findMany. So we're going to say where. So the user ID, we can pass in that, like so. We can say we want to order them by created at, we're going to do descending because we have that created at field, and then we want to take just 5. And that is that. So we don't need to wrap this, to be fair. We can just take user ID, which is user ID, like so. So within our loader, we're going to do this data call. So where's our loader? That's our action function loader. So we've got our user ID. So we want to get recent completions like this equals await get recent completions. Is that what I called it? Get most recent completions. And that is going to take in, I'll make that a string, user ID, like so. And then we just need to return this from the loader. So recent completions. So then let's return recent completions, and I want to also return the current user from the loader as well. So we're not going to use this. I am going to do this. So const current user equals await get user by ID, which takes in the user ID as well. So return the recent completions and current user from here. And then in our front end, we want to say const loader data equals use loader data. So this actually use loader data. That's the problem with that one. So use loader data from Remix.run React. That's correct. And we're getting an issue because user is not defined. So let me just check the loader data now and just see what is coming through. User email. And then we don't have user tokens either. So we've got recent completions, current user. So we can do user, which is current user, equals loader data, like so. And then we can bring these back. Is that the other way around? Current user. It's user. Like so. So that's good. And then we have got our recent completions. And then we can bring out those recent completions as well. And then we simply need to start mapping through those recent completions. So we want to be underneath the form here. So we'll say we've got recent completions, and we do recent completions.map. So then we take the completion, which is going to be a completion from Prisma client, like that. Dot map, completion. And then we need to do some stuff. So let's just for now return a div that says hello. Okay, so we got 5 completions and we're saying hello for each one of those, which is cool. So the first thing to do is we need to get our prompt. Let's refresh this, clear out that, refresh the page. And then I want to console log recent completions. So we can see here we've got the prompt. So for each one of these, we do want to return a div. So let's give it a key to make it happy. So the key is going to be completion.id. And then let's do just a H3 with the completion.prompt. So these are the prompts. So let's do, let's make that bold, text extra large, and then let's leave it like that for now. Yeah, maybe semi-bold. And then what you can see in the answer, so I had to do in the last one, is just split it on all of those new lines. So we can say text is going to be completion dot answer, like this. And I'm going to say if the text includes this \n, like so, then I want to do text equals text.split on the n, and we can say here text equals, and we just merge all the text together like that. Type string is not assignable to type string. So string array. So let's just shut that up. I'm just conscious of the time. So then underneath this, we're going to do in a div. So we're going to say when we've got text, we do text.map. So we take the line, which is a string, and do a paragraph with the line. And then for the key here, because we could have 2 lines of text, which is the same thing, in theory, I'm just going to put in here the line like so, and then a dash, and then just do like a random thing. So if we do math.random toString 36 dot slice, and we just take 2 and 7 like so. And that's looking pretty good. I mean, it's not really, just because of some of the spacing. Let's refresh that. So yeah, this is looking better. So we're going to just put something in that will hopefully make some sense. So we can see that we've got that now. So let's wrap all of this in a div. Like so. So I can do margin top of 8. We could put in here recent completions, and then take this, we could just make a different color. There we go. And then on all of these individual ones, let's do margin top of 8 as well. So get some space between them. And then I don't feel like the title is standing out enough. Text dash, what do you do? Make it whiter. Make it mono. Yeah, I don't know. That's no problem. We can see what is going on. So give me 10 blog post ideas about web development. Submit. So when we use more tokens, which is, corresponding to length usually, it will take a little bit longer. So what we're going to do next is introduce some loading into this, and we're pretty much going to be done for this video. So for the loader, when we're submitting, or when the action is working, we are going to show some loading context and disable this field set. So let's do the field set first. So in a normal React way, what you'd be doing is, this is client side. You would be managing the state for loading, but with Remix, we can use this hook use transition. And the transition, what it can be is a few different states. We're interested in the submitting state. So we use this field set. So I can say now disabled is when transition is equal to submitting, like so. The condition will always return false since the types transition and string have no overlap. Transition.state equals submit. And then what I'm going to do is just when it's disabled, I'm going to do a small change in the UI. Text select, disabled, text select, 400, button. So disabled is going to be BG select, I don't know, 800. And then on this, let's do disabled BG select 900. Like that. So write an article. So write a detailed article about what is jQuery, for example. Let's give it a bit of length. Submit. So you can see we've got a slight change here. While it's disabled, we can't do anything. But still, quite a bit of loading. So let me just, when it's disabled, hover, it's going to be BG select 800, just the same. Disabled. Like so. That's better. Awesome. And then the last thing is integrating some loading. So CSS loaders. I'm not sure which ones I usually use. This one is fine. So that is all of the CSS. Div class loader equals loading. So let's add in the loading here. So I still want to show the recent ones below, I guess. So it's class name. Let's flex that, justify, center. And then we've got the loader. And then what we can do in our structure here, I'm just going to go into public, make a new folder called styles, make a new file, globals.css. And then I'm just going to chuck this into there. The color looks like it's white already, so that's good. Globals.css. And then to load CSS here, we'll say import global CSS from /public styles global.css, is that what I called it? Globals. And then I want another one of these. That's not what I want. So style sheet href global CSS. Awesome. So now I'm only going to show this if transition.state equals submitting. Like that. And then we return this. So write a detailed article about building responsive websites with Bootstrap. Submit. We're loading. So this takes a little bit more time with the setup that I have because we're doing it twice and then picking the best one to display. You don't necessarily need to do that. That's the best of option within your API call up here. So best of two. If I change it to best of one, it will be a bit quicker. And that pretty much concludes what I wanted to get through in this video. So if we log out now and log back in, we can see that everything is preserved. I think if you've made it this far, well done. It's taken a couple of hours to get through this, but it's a really useful tool and hopefully a good introduction to Remix. I think being able to build a full stack application within a couple of hours with authentication stuff is really huge. So next up, we've got a few options around what we could do. I'd like to know what you would like to see. First thing is testing. We could go and test everything here. We could integrate mocking for the API response so that we can develop on it locally and of course test it that way. We can definitely do more TypeScript stuff. There's some stuff that isn't type safe in here where I've just skipped it, where just to save time. We can definitely handle errors in a better way on the front end. We're only really handling if a user doesn't have enough tokens right now, but returning different errors from our action function, displaying them on the front end would be sensible too. Using the OpenAI API, you've got lots of different things. So you've got the completions, question answering. There's loads of different things that you could integrate into here, where you have a select box and you can select what you want, and you might get a different text prompt, things of that nature. This could be expanded upon a lot. If you want to keep working through this with me, let me know what you want to see next. Don't forget to subscribe. We got lots more content coming. And like I say, if you made it to the end of this, then well done. It's been a long one, but hopefully it was worth it. See you in the next one.